everybody. As he mentioned, I'm Tyrone Rock. I'm a soil conservationist with the Bureau of Indian Affairs here at the Colville Tribes. And I work in a joint program. It's made up of Land Operations Department and the Range Program together, and I'm just on kind of the land operations side of things. So as you can see from the title, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how we've approached the management of flowering rush here. So here's a quick outline of what I'm going to kind of cover today. I'm going to give you guys a quick land operations program overview, give you some basics on flowering rush, talk about kind of our initial approach to management here. And then I'll talk about some challenges that got brought up after that initial approach, talk about what we did to collaborate and kind of coordinate management efforts. And then we'll talk about future plans and lessons learned. So a quick background. Again, land operations program is the side of the program that I work in, and I'm a soil conservationist. So like many of you, I'm sure I wear multiple hats. The most relevant hat to this presentation is I'm in charge of the tribe's invasive species program. So mainly this includes preparing funding proposals, contracting out work for herbicide treatments, conducting herbicide treatments with program staff, doing biological control releases, surveying, etc. The most relevant hat, the next most relevant hat is working with the BEAR team, which is also known as the Burned Area Emergency Response Team. So basically, anytime there's a large fire on the reservation, I'll go in after it's burned over and apply for noxious weed control funding, whether that's for chemical control or biological control releases. And then the last major hat is I create conservation plans here. Any tracts that are leased out through the realty program, whether that's for agriculture or livestock production. And if you guys are curious, the picture here on the bottom right, or on the bottom left, sorry, is a Canada thistle gallfly. And then the picture on the right is a treatment that we did on a large Scotch thistle infestation with program staff. So as you can tell from the last slide, the majority of the work that I do is focused on the terrestrial side of things. I don't really work a lot with aquatics. So I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to flowering rush, and I'm likely going to cover some material that other presenters already covered. So bear with me here. So flowering rush is an herbaceous aquatic perennial. It's a rhizomatous monocot, and it's spread across North America's waterways the last century. It's native to portions of Europe and Asia. And it established in Eastern North America, and it's continued to expand to the Western US and Southwest Canada. In Washington State, it's listed as a Class A noxious weed, and it can be found within the Columbia Basin. Again, we're going to focus on kind of the Lake Roosevelt and Spokane River area, but it's also in other Columbia River tributaries. So flowering rush spreads rapidly by rhizomes and bulbils, which you can see in the top picture here. And those can easily break off through wave action boats. It can grow to depths of 20 feet, and it can grow both emergent or completely submerged in water. It's able to grow in both fluctuating and stable water conditions as well. So obviously flowering rush can be extremely difficult to control. It's considered an ecosystem engineer due to its ability to significantly alter habitats by sediment accretion. It also creates ideal habitat for northern pike, which is pictured below here. And they're known predators of native salmonid species, which is obviously of particular importance to tribal communities. So here in Lake Roosevelt, flowering rush was first reported in the summer of 2019 by Larry Hudson, who works for the Okanogan County Weed Board. And it happened to be while he was out fishing. And so the Washington State Department of Ecology did a follow-up survey to confirm the report, and flowering rush was positively identified. So following this confirmation, here at the tribe, we realized that we had a problem. So we sent in a funding proposal to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for both treatment and survey. Luckily, we were awarded those funds, so we were able to contract out a comprehensive survey for the tribal side of the river, from the Grand Coulee Dam upriver to the reservation border. And that survey took place in 2020. And then following that survey, we were able to contract out the first treatment in the spring of 2021. So the map on the left here is those survey lines that were contracted out in 2020 with dates. And then on the map on the right shows both the Department of Ecology survey points as well as the contracted out survey points. So the 2019 points in yellow are from the Department of Ecology, and the 2020 points in purple are the survey points that were contracted out. So after the first treatment took place in 2021, we kind of identified a few challenges. The first major challenge is that Lake Roosevelt experiences a drawdown in the spring. And this is a major challenge because that treatment has to take place during that drawdown period, but also needs to take place in an adequate time before that water starts coming back up. And during this time of the year, the plants are really, really small. So to make this more difficult, we got to kind of delay that treatment as long as possible so we can get as much plant growth as possible to take place. So timing that has to be very careful. To make this even more challenging, the drawdown levels vary on the year. So in 2021, for example, when we did that first treatment, the lake levels didn't drop as much. So a lot of the infestation was still underwater, so it was not able to be treated. And the following years in 2022 and 2023, the lake levels were much lower, and it allowed for a much larger area to be treated. So another challenge that we're facing is that this flying rush infestation is coming from sources that are upstream. So that's most notably from the Spokane River. And the Spokane River's flying rush infestation source is Lataw Creek, also known as Hangman Creek. And so this is obviously a challenge because even if we're taking care of our flying rush here on the Colville tribes, we're relying on those upstream populations being eradicated. So mentioning these other flying rush populations leads to another challenge, and that's land ownership. So in Lake Roosevelt, the majority of the land is owned, or the majority of the shoreline is owned by the Bureau of Reclamation, but it's managed by the National Park Service. So we have known populations of flying rush that are located on the opposite side of the reservation in other counties, where this kind of weird management circle comes into play. And so we're currently trying to talk with both the Bureau of Reclamation and National Park Service to figure out the steps to get those treatments approved. And we're hoping to get that figured out this year. Luckily for us on the tribal side, there's a 5-party agreement that's in place between us, the Spokane tribes, National Park Service, Bureau of Rec, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, where basically we have management authority to perform the treatments that we've been doing under this agreement in what's known as the reservation zone. So another challenge is that it's a large flowing river. So treatments, again, have to occur during that drawdown period, but it means that we're not able to do in-water treatments like you'd be able to do in a lake or a pond. The same goes for biocontrols. The last that I've heard is they're still kind of testing things out. But even when they do get approved, those releases are likely going to start with lakes and ponds. And the success in a fast-moving river is probably going to need to be tested. And then lastly, funding is always a challenge. Again, luckily, we've been able to get funds through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but there's some other resources that I'm going to talk about here shortly. So after those challenges, I kind of brought up those challenges as well as like what we had already been working on here in Lake Roosevelt during the Upper Columbia Cooperative Weed Management Area meeting, and they hold that annually. And after that meeting, we basically decided to create a smaller group of entities, of people that were interested in collaborating and kind of tackling this issue in Lake Roosevelt. And so in this smaller group, we decided the best route to take would be to create an MOU in hopes of having a list of entities sign on to it. And so that's obviously the Colville tribes, Spokane tribes was another entity. And then we had several county weed boards, Ferry County, Okanagan County, Lincoln, and Stevens. The Washington State Noxious Weed Control Board, Department of WSDA, Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, DNR, Department of Ecology, and the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office. And so we're kind of, we've gotten some of those signatures, but we haven't gotten all of them. And we're kind of working on getting the Bureau of Rec to sign on to this as well, but they're having to do some edits to the MOU. So we're kind of going through that process at this moment. But the MOU has allowed us to collaborate and work closely, mainly with Ferry County Weed Board, WSDA, DNR, and Department of Ecology. And they've been really helpful with treatment and survey efforts. So they've provided not only boats, but they provided staff, and they've helped facilitate moving equipment for contractors, whether that's the UTV you see pictured here or chemical, across the river, up and down the river, etc. And they've provided a lot of transportation help with myself. My program doesn't have access to a boat. Ferry County doesn't have access to a boat. And other staff within that MOU, they've provided transportation to kind of help facilitate the treatment and survey efforts that we've had going on. So we submitted another request for funds through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and we were awarded again, and that was in 2022. And so with that funding proposal and this MOU in place, we contracted out treatments again. Again, lake levels were drawn down much further. So a lot more of the infestation was able to be treated. The only issue that we had this year, 2022, was we weren't able to get approval for the ATV or UTV use from the history and archaeology program until like the very last day. So the majority of the treatments were done with backpack sprayers. So that wasn't ideal, especially for this main plot that I'm going to show you here soon. And during those treatments, WSDA put together some treatment test plots using different rates. They put in a plot for 2 pints per acre, 4 pints per acre, and 6 pints per acre. And this is using an aquatically approved imazapyr. And so when we went to do treatments in the spring of 2023, we contracted out those treatments again for the 3rd time. And before we did those treatments, we took a look at those test plots and realized that the max rate of 6 pints per acre gave the best results. So during the spring of 2023, we were able to utilize the UTV pictured here to treat the largest patch of flowering rush. And that's located across from Seven Bays Marina. And you can see here these yellow lines represent the UTV tracks that were taken during those spring 2023 treatments.
About 3 minutes left.
Okay. So the rest of the isolated, the smaller patch here were treated with backpack sprayers. And again, this was the first time that we were able to utilize the 6 pints per acre for the entirety of treatments. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to see and get a better idea of how effective these treatments can be this year. So after the treatments in 2023, we contracted out another survey. And this was in coordination with Ferry, Lincoln, and Stevens County. And so the hope is that we can fill in any survey gaps with the MOU with WSDA's help and DNR's help as well. And so like I mentioned previously, so we started to look at other funding avenues, and this kind of brings up, there's a funding source that's provided by the Army Corps of Engineers, who kind of coordinates with the Washington State RCO, where basically they have a matching funds program and they'll provide a 50% match for treatment or survey work. The only issue is you can't use federal dollars as match for these funds. But here at the tribe, since these BI funds are federal, we have a PL 96-638, where basically those funds are considered tribal dollars. And so we're able to kind of match those anyway. And so we've already gotten reimbursed 50% for the treatment work that we did in 2023. And then we're in the process of getting reimbursed that 50% for the survey work. So plans going forward, the first step is assessing if the treatment was effective from 2023. And then the plan is to continue treatments this year near the end of April. But instead of contracting out, we're going to use program staff from Land Operations Program and Ferry County Weed Board. And we're still going to get help from WSDA and DNR. And then we need to continue to work on getting flowering rush populations on adjacent and upstream areas to do their part. And then in 2025, we need to evaluate these treatments, see if they're effective or not, and then kind of go from there, whether we need to look at alternative treatment options or not. And with all these future plans in mind, we need to continue to look at additional funding avenues, especially with how costly this project can be. So what lessons were learned? So obviously flying rush is very difficult to manage. And I know this session is supposed to be covering success stories. I think the jury's still out on whether this project is successful as far as the treatment side, but I think this project is a success when it comes to the collaboration of all the entities that have kind of been involved to help with this project. So again, collaboration is key for large projects like this. What I found is that other agencies want to help and are willing to help. And it's important to take advantage of various funding avenues, especially if you're a tribal entity. There's a lot of different funding opportunities available to you. And that's it. Thanks.